COVID has changed the world in more ways than anyone can ever imagine. But one of the critical things, or the biggest impacts to society, has been the supply chain. Everything around us, from this booth to this microphone to the clothes I'm wearing, was manufactured somewhere. And our ability to take that central manufacturing and distribute it to the world was really challenged through COVID. What I see is additive manufacturing solving a need for making the parts where you need them, taking something that was previously unobtainable or inaccessible. Technologies like continuous reinforced carbon fiber composites, easy to print metal technology that we focus on, technologies like MSC Digimat for simulating and designing parts to solve hard problems, but solve them where you need them. We recently had a great success story with Vestas, one of our favorite customers, who is now printing critical inspection gauges and tools for the manufacture of windmills where they're building the windmills instead of making them elsewhere and trucking them around the world. So it's both simplifying their supply chain, but also helping address COVID concerns.
I think the pandemic and the COVID virus has really changed and disrupted the supply chain massively. And that, I think, has created a need for a solution which is agile and flexible. You saw some of the part on the Evergreen ship blocked in the Suez Canal. We just had a presentation with one of our beta customers on the SAF H350 printer, who was able to use this solution, this new process developed by Stratasys of selective absorption fusion, to make parts on demand very quickly. And he was able to print a part which was stuck on one of the container on the Evergreen, solving a supply chain issue. And this is what customers want. They want a solution which is very agile, very flexible, and will solve their supply chain issue. If you have to wait 20 weeks to get an injection molding, when you could have printed maybe tens of thousands of parts by the time you receive the mold, I think additive now is being perceived as a viable solution and a cost-effective solution to address those supply chain issues.
When I started in the additive manufacturing world, my vision was always distributed manufacturing, a more connected supply chain. So what COVID has helped us understand is that additive really does have a role to play, and that the problems of supply chain disruption are really acute. The fact that we have a technology at our fingertips that can produce parts locally on demand for people is a really big vision that I think people now finally are beginning to grasp and beginning to capture. So from my perspective, COVID has been a real boost to the additive manufacturing industry.
I think COVID has started thinking about supply chains, thinking about how we can change the world and make it more reliable for unseen changes in the supply chains. But honestly, I think it's just the starting point of thinking about that. I don't believe that we will right now see a complete massive change of how the supply chains work. But indeed, it is a starting point. And now the companies will really think about how they can industrialize additive manufacturing and not just work on prototypes or small tiers, but really go for mass production.
I think COVID changed the perspective of people on additive manufacturing because it showed that you can actually be very flexible in creating certain solutions when, for example, you have a supply chain issue. You cannot supply certain parts. Additive manufacturing can be a flexible production source for that. That's the way I think additive manufacturing showed its true power.
Yeah, if we think about the impact of COVID on the perception of additive manufacturing, I do think it has changed the perception that people have about additive manufacturing and the potential of additive manufacturing. When, for instance, there was first of all, I think it started with a shortage of like masks or equipment, like breathing equipment for hospitals, and the problem due to the fact that parts that were usually produced in China couldn't be transported to Europe. Then everybody felt like that we had a problem with the supply chain, and that actually additive manufacturing could overcome that hurdle. So I think people looked at it from a different angle, saying, hey, you know what? We can actually produce locally with such process, and that solves a lot of our supply chain issues, and maybe that will reduce our dependency on Eastern countries or Eastern regions doing the production for us. So in that sense, I think it really changed the perception. That being said, and it's still, people don't know necessarily how to leverage additive manufacturing and make parts, but they know that this process can help them like overcome issues with the supply chain.
I think one of the good things about COVID, if there are any, is that actually additive manufacturing became visible to a broad community, globally speaking, because it's been a niche before, and I think now it's obvious to almost all of the world.
For sure, COVID has changed the perception that people have of additive manufacturing. What happened during COVID, so we always knew that additive manufacturing could help accelerate the supply chain. When COVID happened, the supply chain broke. So additive manufacturing can be a possible solution for accelerating and streamlining the supply chain. But for a broken supply chain, it's the only solution. So people realized that they needed, it was no longer an option. It was actually the only option. So it really changed completely the perception of additive manufacturing as a real and viable solution.
What is the impact of COVID for the AM technology? For us personally, because we are a newcomer in the business, it gives us a little bit more time to progress our own developments. For the general trends and the development of the market, I think that we had learned in the last 2 years that by digital communication, that the digital world is coming into our daily business, and that's good also for additive because it's a digital technology, and to learn more about how to deal with digital, it will be a push also for additive manufacturing.